So wanted to bring some help this morning. Melissa Caldwell Engle is she's a counselor, does a whole lot of things. Melissa, welcome into the show. It is a Feel Good Friday. First thing we like to ask our guest, what are you grateful for today? What are you feeling good about?
Well, I'm feeling good because I slept like 8 hours last night without waking up once.
Very nice. Good work, Melissa. So
that's my gratitude this morning.
Good. So here's what I've been doing past several months in trying to deal with all of this stuff and keep on top of it. I've been drinking heavily. So far, I don't think it's a good plan. I'm hoping you got some tips for us this morning.
Are you talking about specifically to all the crisis and people just getting overwhelmed with hearing constant information?
Or the drinking? Either one. They're kind of...
What's the best type of liquor to try and get through the... No,
crisis overload, crisis fatigue. Because I believe this. People I talk to, my experience, absolutely believe this is affecting people. What can you offer us?
Well, and you named it. I mean, we are a society that's driven by distraction. We bury anything that feels unpleasant and uncomfortable, and we go to the next shiny object that makes us feel good. So that's kind of culturally how we are. And what that does to us is when there are things like this that happens, and if we've got any insecurities or fears or things from the past that we have buried and just have kept on trucking, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and keep on going. What happens when there's crises like this is it kind of takes the lid off of all those suppressed, hidden insecurities, fears, all those feelings that we've not dealt with, hurts. And we're seeing just such a rise in people struggling with depression, anxiety, even old PTSD wounds are opening up again. We're seeing lots and lots of addictions, just like you pointed out. I mean, even shopping addictions, gambling, but a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. A lot of folks really, really struggling who are just overwhelmed with all the information and the emotion that's being stirred up by all of this.
Good morning, Melissa. This is Laura. So another thing with, just the pandemic, we constantly see the news, listen to the news, and a lot of times it's just 24/7 with all these issues. But another thing I've noticed, or I think is going to cause the problems going forward, so you've got this whole social distancing thing going on, and human beings are very, we like to be in the company of other human beings. We're very social. And this wearing of masks. You can't see people's facial expressions. You can't tell if people are smiling or frowning or happy or sad. And, you hear stories about, people that are maybe on the verge of suicide. I mean, it was just that one person who smiled at them and said hello. But now we can't even have that social interaction. How is this going to impact people, and especially young children, if they're forced to wear these masks and do all this social distancing at schools where they can't play with their playmates?
Well, I mean, you just outlined it beautifully. You're right on. We are creatures of connection. And, there's a lot of research that shows even with addictions that they talk about that the way the answer to addiction is not all about just sobriety. It's about connection. So a lot of times they say the opposite of addiction is connection. And so we're seeing more and more of the results of that. So it's going to affect us, and it does affect us. We need connection, energy, and touch. And even if you, like you said, not even being able to read people's faces, that's so much of our social cueing and the way we kind of mirror the energy that's around us. And when you can't read that energy, it's going to create anxiety and tension, and it already is. So that's a very valid point that you just beautifully explained.
Let me ask you this. I know we've only got about 90 more seconds left with you. It's Melissa Caldwell Engle, licensed professional counselor, been helping people for years. Like, I've heard this with a lot of people, and I get this, and I don't know the best way I can explain it is I don't necessarily get physically tired, but like my head is tired. Does that make sense to you?
Well, absolutely. And keep in mind, when we have this overstimulation like this, it keeps our body in a low threshold of fight or flight. And when you have adrenaline in your body, it's going to it's going to tax your immune system, which makes it even worse, right? It's going to tax your immune system, your reproductive system, your ability to think straight, your digestive system. So there's a lot of systems physically that are getting fatigued, even if you don't think that mentally it is. It is taxing our bodies. So it's mentally damaging, physically damaging, spiritually damaging, relationally with our relationships, it's damaging. So it has a pretty broad spread ripple effect when we're stressed out for long periods of time.
So one of the things we can do is seek other people out. By the way, if you're having a rough go of it, things are down for you, who do you go see? Or do you just talk it out yourself as a counselor?
You know, I try to hang around people that are not super reactive and that do a lot of self-awareness. You have to do a lot of deep breathing. You have to be aware of how you're feeling. You have to be able to have places where you can joke and have fun. So it's just really important that you take good care of yourself and turn off the TVs. I won't say turn off the radio, but turn off the TV.
Good work, Melissa.
we're getting too much information, and it's just too overwhelming.
Melissa Caldwell Engle, licensed professional counselor, crisis fatigue, some tips right there for you. Hey, thank you for your time. I know you're busy this morning. We hope you have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. I know they say that a lot. They say, seek out the company of other people.
But you can't now because people are freaking out. And, she did bring up a good point about, your immune system constantly being in this stressful situation. And stress is one of the biggest factors of inflammation, which causes a whole host of ailments and illnesses. So people, I'm thinking, in the next year or so, there's going to be a lot of, physical ailments like cancer, and just because you couldn't get to the doctor for pre-screening, plus all this stress on our immune system. So if you can try, maybe just get out in nature a little bit, or just try and meditate and eat well so that at least you can fuel your mind and body with some positivity. And I'm not kidding. I know sometimes it's hard to get up and get physically active. I know. I have been spending more time on the MKT trail lately. MKT